The Joe Budden situation just got a whole lot weirder, and Joe might be in some serious trouble here. Do y'all remember this incident back in December when Edgewater Police Department in New Jersey released a statement claiming that Joe Budden was being charged with lewdness? Now, they would claim that on December 4th, 2024, at approximately 7:21 a.m., the Edgewater Police Department was dispatched to an apartment complex for the report from a resident that a man was standing with Joe Budden outside of their apartment door completely naked. The caller recognized the man as a neighbor, Joseph Budden Jr., a 44-year-old male. The caller was alerted to Joe Budden by their doorbell camera. The video depicted Budden attempting to enter a code into the door keypad several times before re-entering his own residence across the hall. As a result of the police investigation, Joe Budden was charged with lewdness. Now, Chief Martin states that these charges are merely accusations and that the defendant is presumed innocent until and unless proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Joe was never formally arrested, and the police department actually dropped the charges. And they dropped the charges because Joe Budden actually had a perfect explanation for why he was butt naked in front of his neighbor's door, even though he didn't live there. It's because he's a sleepwalker, right? Joe Budden has been diagnosed with sleepwalking, and he sleepwalks. And that particular day, he just so happened to be sleepwalking in front of his neighbor's door.
Welcome back to TMZ Live. Joe Budden has got a criminal case that involves nudity. He was at his apartment building earlier this month and somehow walked out of his unit and was naked and walked to a neighbor's door, knocked on it. It was a woman who has kids in there. She called the cops. So Joe Budden has a defense to this that he talked about on a podcast.
I just sleepwalked somewhere that I shouldn't have sleptwalked. And you know how I sleep.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Oh, butt ass. Nice naked ass. Good naked sleepwalking. I just did it again. Nobody can go through this stuff but me. It's only me. It's only me. So you got to deal with
that. Puts everything.
You got to deal with what comes with that.
Okay, so here's my question to you. You're a lawyer. He said he was sleepwalking. There was no intention to go out naked. Good defense or not?
Oh, absolutely good defense. But you better have some history of sleepwalking before.
But if you do, it seems to me you don't have the intent to go out and create kind of a lewd...
At worst, it would be negligence because you should be able to put things on the door to stop you from sleepwalking outside. But that would be a very small crime. I mean, you wouldn't... That would be largely a defense other than negligence.
But, you know, it's sort of like Ambien, where sometimes people do things... I mean, yeah. I ended up on the floor and my dogs were eating rice off my chest.
I passed out.
I had no idea about this.
I had spaghetti all over me when I woke up on Ambien. So yes.
Okay.
But I sleep naked and I definitely do not walk into the hallway.
Okay, enough.
It was clearly a brilliant defense because the charges got dropped. So we sort of forgot about it. We moved on. Haven't really talked about it. Maybe when 50 Cent reposted it and brought it up recently, we talked about it, but we really haven't had any need to discuss this. That's until today. Even though we've forgotten about it, the neighbors who called the police on Joe Budden, they haven't forgotten about it because they just recently filed a lawsuit against Joe Budden. TMZ broke the story, and the article reads, Joe Budden is being dragged into court by two neighbors who claim he tried to enter their place while naked and has been causing a ruckus in the building with his podcast. TMZ Hip Hop obtained a complaint by attorney Thomas Margilano on behalf of John and Eulila Oxoy, who claimed Joe Budden, his podcast host Melissa Ford, and the Condo Association have engaged in a campaign of intimidation and retribution after the Oxoys raised complaints about the disruption from Joe Budden recording his highly rated podcast in the building. They released screenshots of Joe Budden with his clothes off at their front door. Now, the picture is cropped because obviously they can't release Joe Budden's genitalia. If they do, they would have a huge lawsuit on their hands. Now, they will claim that Joe showed up with no clothes on. And now what we can see, according to them, they will say that Joe had his hands on his, on his genitalia. They believe that this was intentional and it wasn't sleepwalking and it wasn't a mistake. And they will say that this is actually retaliation for a series of events that took place between the two. Their issues with Joe Budden actually started on some pretty regular neighbor stuff. They were upset that Joe Budden was filming his podcast in a residential place. And because he was filming his podcast and they were neighbors, they complained about excessive noise from the podcast, complained about Joe Budden and his co-host, and people coming in and out of, like the residential building, smoking weed in the condos, leaving ashes on the property, and creating what they would say is a hazardous health situation for their young daughter. On an episode of the Joe Budden podcast, because I remember this, Joe actually spoke briefly before we even knew what was going on about how he had to stop filming at the building for a brief time because he was unhappy about the treatment of his, of his co-host, right? He felt like they were being treated unfairly. He felt like they were being harassed. Now, come to find out, he was talking about this couple.
And what I'm going through personally is totally separate from why we not over there. The long and short of that is the bylaws of the town, because now the town is involved, says that you cannot film anything in any of those buildings.
Oh.
That's the long and short of it. Now, you could choose to fight that and go to court and spend the money, but somebody over there got the town involved, and that's what it is. For me, I didn't want none of my people to continue to be surveilled and scrutinized and treated a certain way.
Yeah.
I never want that.
The couple is also including the building in the lawsuit because they feel like the building has taken Joe Budden's side. And they feel like the building has sort of taken Joe Budden's side in this entire situation after the building allowed them to continue filming in the building. And they feel like this is the cause because Joe Budden played the race card with them. Right now, do I think that Joe Budden would just lie about them being racist? I don't know. But according to this couple, Joe Budden would claim that they said racist things to him and he has it on audio, but when they asked him to produce it, he never produced the audio of the racist recording. In the complaint, the Axois said they filed a complaint with the Condo Association, leading to Budden firing back. Now, this is a trend with black folks, all right? We do this. Now, Joe Budden character to me don't fit what he's being accused of, but black folks do race bait, right? So it said leading to Joe Budden firing back at accusing Yalila of making racially charged remarks towards him. They say Budden even doubled down and claimed to have a recording of the alleged racism. John says he called his bluff and told him to produce the audio, which they said still hasn't surfaced. What I find interesting, though, is they would claim that the catalyst for them filing this lawsuit was an episode of the Joe Budden podcast where they listened to and watched Joe Budden and a co-host talked about the incident. And they would claim that the co-host and Joe misrepresented a lot of the facts and they feel like they're being defamed. But they will also say that parts of what's discussed in the podcast actually shows that there was some type of, ill intent when it comes to the sleepwalking incident. Now, I've always known Joe to be a sleepwalker. I've never known Joe to be lying about that. Even before this incident, Joe has always admitted to being a sleepwalker, like damn near a decade ago. But they will say that when you look at the series of events that took place before the sleepwalking incident, it proves that this was intentional. So let's review exactly what they're referring to.
For a few months now, I've been having an ongoing battle with this racist couple. He's Turkish, she's Russian. I ain't saying nothing. I ain't saying nothing. He's Turkish, she's Russian, she's a Karen. They have been doing all types of shit for months in terms of just complaining about noise and the smell and seeing black people and having to share spaces with black people. In my one conversation I've had with this lady, in an irritable moment for her, she said, "You people will never change. Y'all just refuse to grow." I was alone, so I don't know who you people or y'all was. I took that to me, okay, this lady's racist, and that explains some of the behavior. But that didn't stop. They've had me investigated by the building, who loves us here, by the way. They've had me investigated by the owner of the unit. They've complained about electrical outlets for my cars needing to be plugged in. They've complained about anything that you could possibly complain about for months.
You can kind of see both sides there. Like if you just put yourself in both people's shoes, right? Joe Budden is thinking, bro, these people already said some racist stuff to me, man. They could have simply come and asked me, hey, bro, what were you doing at our door? Were you right? And you can see it from their perspective. This dude that we've been going back and forth with for months all of a sudden shows up at our doorstep with no clothes on. Oh, he did this on purpose. So the lady actually called the police and told the police that Joe Budden came to her doorstep to R-word her, to grape her.
Yeah, but I just be minding my business. So, like, if you're not in my zone, then that's it. But everybody don't operate like that. So these people have been doing this for months. This has been ongoing while we've been recording, and that's the door I sleepwalk to.
Yeah, that's the irony too. That's the ironic piece. Yeah.
That's the door that I decided to sleepwalk directly to, butt ass naked. Normally, you would think you knock on somebody's door, be like, "Hey, you good?
Got some sugar?"
I seen you over here. You was at my door with your dick out." But no, these people decided to misuse some of the systems that are in place for real victims, and they went to the police to file a report to say that Joe Budden was outside of their door masturbating on their door, and they don't know if I was there with the intention to R-word.
Here's where things get a little bit tricky and interesting. So before this lawsuit, this new lawsuit they just filed, they actually initiated the legal process on Joe before this. Now, the police dropped the charges, but when the police dropped the charges, they weren't satisfied with that, obviously, and they wanted Joe Budden out the condo, out the building. So they initiated a bench trial, right, to kick Joe Budden out the building. And they were trying to kick Joe Budden out the building on the basis of lewdness and, I believe, harassment. So they actually went to trial, right? It was civilly. They went to a civil trial.
But anyway, so we go to court. All right, so we go to court.
This is the fastest trial in history too. Like,
It wasn't fast to me. And this is for stalking and lewdness.
Stalking.
Stalking and lewdness.
How long was the video? How long was the video?
10 seconds. So she get up there and she does all the crying. Oh my God, I was in fear for my life, and my kids saw this. And to be clear, I saw some of the think pieces out there saying, oh, if you were sleepwalking in front of kids, that was horrible. No, this lady showed this video to her kids. So
Basically.
I don't fuck about none of that. And then her husband took the stand, and then they were cross-examined. And by preponderance of the evidence,
Kick rocks. Get out of here.
because then she got into what some of these things mean. Stalking means by statute 8.25.
Words mean things. Words mean things.
2 or more times where you have harassed, threatened, made somebody in fear for their life, or yada, all of this shit that didn't apply to me. So she was like, by preponderance of the evidence, no, I don't find that is stalking.
I don't feel like Joe Budden did this on purpose. I don't feel like Joe Budden is throwing away his entire career to show these people his genitalia. I just don't feel like he's either that stupid or that freaky. He's neither in my book. But I don't feel like these people are evil either. And I do know, because we really like Joe Budden, it's kind of hard to sort of root for these people, but I don't feel like they are evil or they're just making things up either. What I feel like is both sides is true. Joe Budden didn't do this intentionally, but these people feel in their heart he did. Because even Joe Budden would admit that the sleepwalking incident happened a day after they got into it. Apparently, while Joe Budden and his cast was filming a podcast, these people were like dropping like bowling balls and on the floor to like disturb Joe Budden and them. And he actually went outside to confront them.
Video? How long was the video?
10 seconds. 10-second video. But the stalking is from the day before. All of this happened the 3rd and the 4th.
Okay.
Remember we heard all that noise?
It was irony that the day
We heard all that noise.
niggas was throwing bowling balls on the floor.
Yeah,
Yes.
I went up there, stood there to see if I heard some noise, left. The very next day was the sleepwalking shit.
It's irony to us and to the Joe Budden podcast and to his co-host, because we know for the most part Joe Budden ain't a weirdo. So we can probably give him the benefit of the doubt and say this was not intentional and this just so happened to be the day after y'all try to disturb our podcast. These people is looking at it like, oh, a day after we try to disturb your podcast for making a lot of noise, you coming upstairs to confront us. A day later, you do this is clearly retaliation to them. I can't tell them how to feel because I'll be real. If I was in a situation, I'll probably feel that it's retaliation too, right? Because like I don't know you as Joe Budden, the superstar. I just know you as the neighbor who I hate and who hate me. But y'all let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think about this, man? Do y'all feel like Joe Budden is innocent? Do y'all feel like the neighbors is telling the truth? Or are they lying? Let me know in the comment section, all right? And if you're still watching, click on this video here, somewhere on my screen, somewhere here, man, to find out how Sauce Walker revealed exactly how his artist SOP got himself killed after people have been blaming Sauce Walker over the last couple of days for setting up SOP and getting him killed. I'm going to see you guys in this video somewhere on my screen. I'm out of here, folks. Peace.